So what attracted me to it was the fact that I'm placed in a position where I can make strategic business decisions that will essentially translate into economic development for our country. So it felt like a good career move in terms of just having an impact. And yes, the industry is quite male dominated, but at the same time, I think we've come a long way in terms of transformation, whether it be from a gender perspective or even from a racial perspective.
I want to ask for somebody who might be interested in this particular field, perhaps here, Dankie, is what subject and academically, where should their focus be?
So it's a very much number-driven career, obviously with a lot of critical thinking and reasoning. So at the top of it, you would need to have a pure maths and accounting as the core subject. And because I've mentioned the critical thinking and the ability for you to be able to read something and comprehend it, you would then obviously need your English to also be at a certain level. So all the technological, changes that are happening present us a challenge. We were discussing now when you were asking me what the difference is or what makes CA so special. That's another challenge we face, where we have to continuously make sure that our relevance within the economic development can be seen and can be distinct. We talked about, some of the issues that we have in terms of rules and regulations. So the compliance that we have to face, that CAs have to ensure that they comply with. And then lastly would also then be the challenge of the talent shortage, which is underpinned by a lot of issues from the students that we're saying, are not taking on math, or the fact that we have certain CAs that are qualified that will choose to immigrate for better opportunities.
The Groundbreakers, Mondays to Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. on TUTFM.
Welcome back from a break. We are into that very, very sacred space. It's the Plug a Graduate space, where, as I usually say, we bring in all sorts of leading individuals in their respective industries. And they always join us here to understand from them as to the change in various industries. And we always bring the top of the tree. I always say that. And today we have Dankie Mokwena, who's on the line to us now. We're going to have a very broad conversation. Today we are talking growing South African chartered accounting profession. This is a very, very important profession. And perhaps having been in that space will give us a sense of the importance of even that profession to the economy, if any at all. Now, let me tell you who Dankie Mokwena is. She's currently a finance lead at BP, a role in which she has the overall responsibility for the business-facing finance activity relating to midstream SA business and assumes the related accountabilities for the business. Prior to this, she worked as a future leader, general manager at DP World, where she also held a senior finance manager title. Before that, she held various roles in finance and management accounting, having initially completed her articles at Deloitte. Her goal is to drive performance interventions within the businesses she works in to ensure delivery of the in-year and long-term plans actualize. She believes in a responsible leader who takes a holistic view to leadership and positive impact on society. Dankie is a qualified chartered accountant, registered with the South African Institute of Chartered Accountant, and a globally certified management accountant, CIMA. She holds the following qualifications: Executive Development Program with Duke Corporate Education, Master of Commerce in Taxation from Wits, Master of Philosophy, Responsible Leadership from the University of Pretoria, Fundamentals of Project Management from Vets Plus, Postgraduate Diploma in Applied Accounting Sciences from UNISA, and a Bachelor of Accounting Science from Vets University. Beyond her professional and academic achievement, her commitment to making a positive impact in her community has been a driving force in her life. She's a volunteer board member at the accountant, that's AWCA, where she oversees students chapter in major universities focusing on youth and young adult development. Additionally, she contributes her time to the board of Tusong, an organization based in Alexandra that provides extracurricular activities for underprivileged children, aiming to keep them off the street and provide them with a safe haven. These experiences have reaffirmed her passion for continuous learning, critical thinking, problem solving, and development. In her spare time, Dankie enjoys reading, spending quality time with her family and friends, as well as traveling. It looks like you've done it all, Dankie. She's on the line. Let me start by greeting you and welcoming you to the show. Good evening and welcome.
Hi, Obakeng. Thank you so much for having me here. Glad to be online with you tonight and your listeners.
Sure. It's going to be quite a fascinating conversation indeed, and I'm so looking forward to this. Let's start here. What drew you to accounting firstly, and your Jane? And I'm asking that question because we know this to be a male-dominated industry. Yours must have been a very tortuous and challenging journey. What drew you to that firstly, and how would you describe that journey broadly?
Yeah. So I followed the CA profession due to its the name that it holds and the significance that it has in terms of our country and the potential impact it can have. So what attracted me to it was the fact that I'm placed in a position where I can make strategic business decisions that will essentially translate into economic development for our country. So it felt like a good career move in terms of just having an impact. And yes, the industry is quite male dominated, but at the same time, I think we've come a long way in terms of transformation, whether it be from a gender perspective or even from a racial perspective. If we look at our numbers, in about 2001, we had about 400 plus CAs that were qualified that were Black African women. And currently we're sitting with over 10,000 of those. So significant improvements have been made. And yes, I think, yes, most industries are male dominated, but I think we are all in a phase of learning. There's a lot of male men within the business that, offer support and advocate for the equality and equity that we are now seeing within the transformation. So definitely a challenge, but we are getting somewhere in terms of transforming these spaces to be inclusive of all genders and races.
Tell you quite frankly, this is very, very encouraging to hear that, and the numbers clearly have increased quite exponentially, an indication without a doubt that there is progress being made there. But what is the role of a chartered accountant, if I may ask that, Dankie?
So chartered accountants are quite broad, right? I think we find ourselves in different spaces, and I think that's what makes the career unique. You would find us within the public sector, you can find us within the private sector, you can find us even in the space of creativity. But essentially our role is to help the business make informed business decisions by being transparent, being able to challenge and also hold accountability of everyone within the business. We kind of bring everything together and are able to, oversee the business from control perspective to how well it runs, and hopefully also making sure that these businesses run at a very profitable margins to ensure that we're also able to make that positive contribution.
And I'm going to ask a very, very broad question here. What is then the role of a chartered accountant in the economy properly? You are talking here about businesses as well. Let me put this question this way. Let's assume we didn't have a chartered accountant. What does a world like that look to you?
So, with chartered accountancy and bringing in SAICA, right, it means that we are regulated. There's a
Yeah.
certain standard that we are upheld at, which requires us to be competent to a certain level, to uphold integrity, and then to also be accountable.
Yeah.
So, with having CAs, it means that there's a level of assurance that's been offered in terms of the kind of information that's been communicated, to also ensure that we hopefully reduce the kind of scandals that result in huge financial losses for ordinary people, right? So we have a huge responsibility, and there's a governing body that's holding us accountable to make sure that what is communicated out there is actually the truth and is very transparent and actually reflects what is actually going on in business. So I think, yes, as much as there would be financial finance professionals,
Mm-hmm.
with specifically chartered accountants, the accreditation that we get from SAICA and the required training that we receive that brings us to a certain level of decision making and problem solving really puts us at the top of being able to really contribute to the economy.
What are the attributes that I need to have? You're talking about upholding the high level of probity and honesty, but we've seen in some instances as well, a chartered accountant playing a role in cooking books at times. What level of attributes do I need to have to feature into that space?
Yeah, and it's sad that you're mentioning those cases because they are so few, but they overwhelm what CAs do and the kind of impact we really do have in the
Yeah,
different spaces that we operate in. So, and from those instances, there's certain things that are highlighted that will very clearly show they go against what we are expected to do as chartered accountants. We're
yeah,
expected to be, transparent. We're expected to act with integrity. We're expected to uphold certain ways of doing transactions. So even in those cases, the people involved in that are very aware of what's right and what's wrong. It's
yeah.
not a matter of the profession has certain gaps where people can take advantage. People do that fully knowing. So you need to be someone that is able to critically think, to be able to see the impact of your actions, and to also be able to understand the role that you play and the
Yeah,
fact that your actions will have a bigger impact that will probably outlive you. So
yeah.
having that, yeah, carrying that accountability with yourself and being responsible and being someone that understands the weight of what you do.
I want to ask for somebody who might be interested in this particular field, perhaps here, Dankie, is what subject and academically, where should their focus be?
So it's a very much number-driven career, obviously with
Yeah.
a lot of critical thinking and reasoning. So at the
Mm-hmm.
top of it, you would need to have a pure maths
You.
and accounting as the core subject.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've mentioned the critical thinking and the ability for you to be able to read something and comprehend it, you would then obviously need your English to also be at a certain level.
Yep, like yours, surely. And you are, of course, the um, head of student chapters with the chartered accountant. There is the accountant women chartered accountant. Is that the African women chartered accountant? Let's talk about ways then in which you guys are assisting women with regard to that, in terms of making
Yeah.
opportunities available as well.
Yes. So we, as the African Women Chartered Accountants, have played a very big role in terms of advocating for inclusiveness and transformation within the workplaces. We partner with a lot of different organizations. One of those, obviously, at the top being SAICA, to make sure that even from ground level, when we look at the board exams that we have to write as CAs, APC and ITC, that they're quite inclusive, even in terms of the scenarios that someone who is like me, who grew up in Limpopo, can actually read a paper and actually understand and be able to then translate it into writing that paper and being successful. So we have different conversations like that that allow us to move forward. But at the same time, we also offer a lot of support as the AWCA. So we have three tiers that we work by, and those would include identify, nurture, and lead. Within the identify pillar, which is where I sit as the student chapters and our bursary portfolio, we basically do a lot of work in terms of going to high schools and giving information so that people are able to make informed decision about the career and also know ways in what is required and how to go about pursuing the career. So within that, we also then have student chapters that operate at different university levels. We currently are running at about 7 universities and are making more efforts to make sure that our footprint is in every province that we operate in. And what we do with these student chapters is we offer support in terms of from your mental health to exam techniques, to just also offering mentorship, because that guidance is very important as try to qualify. What we also do as the AWCA is we have a bursary fund where we had noted a gap with a lot of the bursaries where they would only be funding undergrad. And so we came together and we formed the AWCA Bursary Fund, which looks at funding students that are in their 4th year where they're pursuing their CTA. And we are proud to say to date, we funded over 143 students. So that's our way of making sure that we're able to get more and more students over the line. And so we do a lot of work even within the other pillars that I've mentioned, of nurturing and identify and leading, where we equip people that are in their training with ITC and APC workshops to make sure they get over the line. They iron out certain things that could be holding them back, as simple as exam technique that nobody really touches on. So we do a lot of that kind of work. We also advocate and we also try to highlight the good work that Black women are doing so that opportunities continue being presented to them and that they're able to uphold these opportunities, and at the same time making sure that we build that sisterhood where we are able to support each other once one of us is in these influential positions, and make sure that we support each other to make sure that we are successful.
So I want to stay momentarily with the bursary fund that you've alluded to earlier on. How do people access those opportunities? I might also add to look at whether you have internship programs that are open that you offer as well.
Yeah, so we open up our bursaries around October to November, December. On the AWCA website, which is www.awca.org. I might just need to confirm the exact website, but if you type in AWCA, it should be the first thing that comes up. And they would be able to, .org.za. They would be able to access that form and apply with obviously all the supporting documents. There's obviously a few requirements around that. One of that being that they need to be African and women. So it's not at this time open to all races and all genders. So they would be able to apply for that. And then in terms of the opportunities that we have, so we do have strategic relationships, especially with some of the training organizations. Sorry, and before I move on from that, within the AWCA fund, we've also been working on having certain strategic relationships with the likes of Motsepe Foundation and even Millpark Education, private education. And that has obviously helped us in ensuring that we're able to reach more students and are able to provide funding. So within that, it will also still be linked within the AWCA website, and then there will be provided support from there. In terms of internships, in terms of the internships, we do work with certain companies where if they do have opportunities, we then would make that known. So currently we don't have anything where the students that study with us are ring fenced to say they can only do their articles with a certain company. We do allow them to explore and see what interests them, but we do have strategic relationships where we are able to open those kind of channels and have certain communications and assist them with applying and finding those internship opportunities.
Do you also work with institutions of higher learning, Dankie, in trying to make sure that these students have opportunities when they go out of campus?
We try drive that through our student chapters. So one of the sessions that the student chapters will host at the different respective universities is they would have something like a career speed dating event, right? Where they would invite different companies to come and make presentations about the internships they offer. So at a university level, that would be the kind of involvement we have. We do have some universities that really back us when we do have events. And they would make sure that whatever connections they have, if it fits whatever event we're doing, they would give us those resources just to make sure that we are able to support the students that sit within our student chapters.
And Simply G was reminding me here to try and maybe get a bit more clarity in terms of what African means in that context. Is that Chinese? Is that colored? Is that what shape and form does it take?
Yeah, so the African definition would include your Black African.
Yes.
It would include your colored, and it would also include your Indian.
Yes.
So it's I think it's as defined within the constitution that we have, and within the BE framework.
There you go. All right, we are in conversation now with Dankie Mokwena, the African Women Chartered Accountant, head of student chapters. In fact, today we are talking growing South African chartered accounting profession, but we don't really get to that. I think there's a lot to explore, even about the opportunities that you are offering. I got a sense there, Dankie, that had we gone straight to perhaps the nitty-gritties in terms of the subject we have on the table, we probably may have missed a number of opportunities and some of the very wise tips that you have to give us. Let's take a quick break. And if you do have a question, please forward that to us on 012 382 9257. Welcome back from a quick break. In a moment, Polelo Madisa is standing by, will take us to the news, but we do have a conversation ongoing now in case you've just touched down. And maybe you are listening to this show for the first time. We are TUTFM, we are 96.2, and this is Plug a Graduate, where we bring in, safe to say, top of the tree, the creme de la creme, to have a conversation with them in their respective fields. And today we have the blessing of having Dankie Mokwena on the line to us, who is the African Women Chartered Accountant, head of student chapter, and we are talking growing South African chartered accounting profession, and obviously that conversation is ongoing. Now let's start there, perhaps, Dankie. What are the ways then of growing the chartered accounting profession?
So one way would definitely be to encourage students to still pursue maths. I think it's something that still needs a lot of effort. And also the accounting in terms of encouraging commerce. So if we start from that ground level where we do encourage students to pursue that, and also provide information. I think a lot of information is lacking, and you find that students only find out about the CA profession much later into their high school journeys, where they've already selected the subjects as to what they're studying. So a lot more work is required in terms of spreading awareness to students in terms of the career itself. And then secondly, it would be to ensure that we support students at a university level. We do have a huge enrollment, at the beginning, and I think it might apply to a lot of other different streams of careers, where there's always a huge enrollment in the beginning of the first year, and as the years go on, students drop off. So a good understanding as to what's contributing to this and how we can offer that support, either from a technical point of view or even from a financial one, because there are those challenges. So which would then obviously bring me into my third point of funding. There's a very huge gap in terms of funding. I think we know our statistics in terms of Africa and the South Africa as a whole, in terms of the struggles we experience and the poverty that people do face. So that access to funding is also a very important one in ensuring that we do grow this profession. And then fourthly would also then be, to be inclusive in terms of whether from the training point of view to even when we write the board exams, to make sure that these are more accessible to everyone and that people are provided the right support to make sure that they see it over the line. So yeah, I think those 4 things, if we are able to put more effort into that, we'll definitely be able to see more CAs coming into the space.
All right, and from the 4 that you've mentioned, I find 2 to be very, very tricky, especially when you place a lot of emphasis on mathematics being important in this. And we speak to people on the ground, you're getting a little bit more appetite being lost by learners and students equally. We'll get to that particular point just after the news. It's, I suppose, just after 8. Polelo Madisa is standing by with the news. It gets us now into the second hour, and in conversation with us now, in case you've just arrived, we have Dankie Mokwena, who is the African Women Chartered Accountant, head of student chapters, is on the line to us now and helping us through very convoluted discussion here. We are talking growing South African chartered accounting profession. I'm not sure if I'll be spot on in guessing that those numbers are decreasing, and it's a view she obviously dismissed lightly and arguing that in fact the numbers are increasing. And I was saying that precisely because I'm looking at the appetite for maths, at times the requirements pushing people away and the amount of work that goes into it. Let me firstly start here. How long does it take though to qualify? Are we looking at a decade of studying here?
I would not quite say a decade, just a bit under that.
Yeah.
It takes about 7 years from your first year to when you complete your article. So that will be broken down into 4 years of doing your undergrad and your postgraduate. And
Yes.
then the next 3 years would include quite intensive training that would also have 2 board exams that you'd have to write before you then
Right.
qualify as a chartered accountant.
Right. So let's get back to our conversation. Before the news, you made a number of interesting points, and maybe let's explore those. You've spoken about issues on bursaries. You've spoken on issues about bursary funds as well, but you also touched on the need to pursue mathematics if you actually have any hope of being a chartered accountant at all. In that, emphasis is placed on that. But my question is, are we seeing, because clearly even from a high school level, we are seeing less and less learners showing appetite for mathematics, even if they go that direction. At times, they do not perform well enough to even warrant any attention. Why do you think there's a problem in that space? And obviously, how do we begin to work around that and solve that problem?
Yeah. I think obviously I don't have the right insight in terms of from a high school level, but I think from just observation, there's a lot of fear that's also instilled in doing mathematics, right? That I think we need to break down and ensure that we have the right support for students when they do pursue maths, and not necessarily from already when they get to grade 10, you're already told that no, you don't qualify, without necessarily giving students a chance to at least equip them to get to a point where they are able to break down the problems and not make it seem as complex. Therefore, scaring them away from that.
Right. So let's get to the issue of funding, and that's a very, very important issue. You have even admitted in your words that this is quite a huge subject. I mean, why is there so much struggle, especially around funding, and how do we make sure that there's accessibility to funding?
Yeah. I think one of the points is around why the reason I mentioned why the AWCA bursary fund exists. In terms of the gap in funding postgraduates, and without your CTA or your 4th year, you are unable to pursue the CA profession. So there's that identified gap. 2, I think we need more strategic relationships that focus on the gaps that we know we are noticing within the economy. So we would need a lot of companies to come together, and so that we're able to address that gap. So I think it's twofolded. The need for companies to be able to dedicate more of the CSR budget towards funding of students, and then 2, making sure that that funding sees the students the whole way through to their CTA year.
How important are those strategic and innovative partnerships, though, in making sure that we grow the profession here, Dankie?
They important in a lot of ways. I think just to mention a few, through those strategic and innovative relationships, we're able to enter new markets. We're able to share certain best practices, and we are able to, come up with new ways of doing things, which means obviously fostering, innovation. So if we're able to work together with, the universities, different companies, and different industry bodies, then we're able to, use the effort, combined effort, to make sure that we're able to have a more rapid impact, as opposed to working in silos and not working towards the same goal.
Right. In case you are working in at a later stage, of course, I know that there is a gala dinner that they are organizing. We'll get into that as well as part of the conversations that we are having. I know that there are a couple of questions that are coming in. Dankie, you may brace yourself for that. I know some people are interacting, and if you like to get interactive with us, you can send us a WhatsApp on 012 382 9257. Of course, we are TUTFM. You can also go onto our website at www.tutfm.co.za. And we also are live, of course, on Facebook as we speak, and as well as YouTube. You can be able to check out all those particular discussions that we have here. And of course, I do have Dankie Mokwena. We are talking a very important subject. And as I said, we always bring people, whether you are talking medicine, whether you are talking mining, but we always make sure that we have people who understand, people who know how many beans make five, people who have been in that line, who understand the intricacies. And at a later stage, we'll also explore the issue around AI, because it's a conversation that should have started where it started, in understanding what they are doing, who the person we are talking about is. It's a conversation. We don't interview people on this line. We create a conversation from which people can be able to derive value as well. So let's talk about the challenges that the accounting profession is facing here. I can imagine we're talking oodles and oodles of challenges here, Dankie.
Yes, there's definitely a lot of challenges, and I think we've touched on a few of those, right?
Yeah.
Some of those would include, you've just mentioned AI. So all the technological, changes that are happening present us a challenge. We were discussing now, when you were asking me what the difference is or what makes CA so special. That's another challenge we face, where we have to continuously make sure that our relevance within the economic development can be seen and can be distinct. We talked about, some of the issues that we have in terms of rules and regulations. So the compliance that we have to face, that CAs have to ensure that they comply with. And then lastly would also then be the challenge of the talent shortage, which, is underpinned by a lot of issues, from the students that we're saying, are not taking on maths, or the fact that we have certain CAs that are qualified that will choose to immigrate for better opportunities. So all those present challenges for us as a profession, and require us to have continuous conversations and to see how we position ourselves as a profession, so that we are equipped enough to be able to make a difference in South Africa and grow the profession.
One very important point that you've touched on earlier on as well is about women empowerment, especially in this particular space. Your numbers seem to be indicating at least a progress from where I stand. But would you say we are at that point where we would say this space is transformed? There's more space now for women to breathe. Are we there yet?
Definitely not. Definitely not. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, from increasing the diversity, ensuring that equal opportunities are presented to CAs, those qualifying, and for the ones coming after, and then creating those inclusive environments, so that once we have certain CAs that are female in influential positions, that they do not get they don't step down because of the support that they're not receiving, or that the environments are still not, transformed enough for them to fully show up in the best way possible. So I would say, yes, we've come a long way. And we're still making more effort, even through the AWCA, through different initiatives that will target, the underrepresented groups to make sure that they're visible. But still a lot of work to be done to make sure that we fully represent the demographics of our country. And currently our statistics in terms of the number of CAs do not represent that.
What do you think are factors perhaps are leading to that need perhaps immediate attention?
The immediate attention, I think we've touched on some of those, in terms of the inclusiveness, in terms of funding, because I think that is one of the biggest barriers out there. But in terms of transforming the spaces so that women are able to excel in those spaces, allows other young women to give themselves permission to try and pursue this profession.
I was encouraged when I looked at the work that you do, especially looking at the challenges preventing women from becoming chartered accountant professionals. And obviously one of the point that comes to mind here that I want us to look at is how, in the context of what you've said, and we've spoken as well about the artificial intelligence, many people are discussing whether the advent of artificial intelligence is actually a threat. Many are saying we can leverage this to the benefit of the growth of the profession. And this time we are talking within the context of a chartered accountant. Are you sitting there and perhaps terrified by the advent of these technological developments? How huge are they a threat?
Yeah, I would be lying if I was to say I'm not challenged. I think it is both a threat and an opportunity. A threat in the sense that if we do sit back and don't do something different, we will, not have a position in the economy and for us to be able to make an impact. But it also presents an opportunity for us to rethink the way we've always done things, to say, can we add more value quicker and more efficiently, right? We need to think about what are the non-value adding activities that we've always been known for as accountants, and say, okay, we can hand that over to AI. But what AI does not have, it doesn't have the judgment that people do. So in that sense, in terms of problem solving and critical thinking, there will always be a place for us. And I like the fact that, even with AI, we've made different efforts, whether it be through the AWCA in terms of the kind of discussions we're holding with different tech companies to find out what's in the market, what can we rethink. Within SAICA itself, we have what SAICA has been driving for a few years now, where they call it CA of 2025, if I'm not mistaken. And what that includes is taking into account the impact of AI and all the improvements that are happening within the technology space, to say, what is it that we need to be doing? Do we need to go as far as to look at the subjects that we're doing at a university level, and should some of those include AI related topics, so that people are equipped and so that we are not afraid? I think the only way we will not be able to use AI to our advantage is if we don't equip ourselves with the knowledge of what can AI do and what can it not do. And then we make sure that as CAs, we stand in the gap of what AI cannot do and use what it can do to make sure that we're able to be more efficient and spend our time on things that really matter.
We obviously are quite afraid of new things. I remember even with the advent of social media and TikTok, there were talks of how that is going to threaten radio, for example, as a medium of communication. And to this point, radio is still standing the ground. How's the future looking from your point of view, all things considered, the impact that AI will have either negatively or positively, from where you stand in an industry that you cannot back down from? How's the future looking from there?
I think it's looking quite bright. It's like you're saying, if you think about everything that social media, for example, has brought, we are here having a conversation in two different rooms, right? Those are things that as much as it's enabling us to do that, you still have to be on the other side. I still have to be on this side to engage and bring emotion and experiences into it. So, as much as, yes, I can see the CA profession being more focused on critical thinking and problem solving, I think it definitely is in the right place where we move from the number crunching, because a computer can do that. But once the number is out there, what is the story that it tells? And how do we look forward and use what we know from the historical performances to future looking? And also, we are able to, as humans, take a holistic view where AI might just look at a number. I'm able to look at that number and say, what impact is this going to have on the economy? What impact is this going to have on the ordinary man on the street? What impact is this going to have on the environment? And that's the power that we have as individuals, as CAs, that are able to just operate beyond numbers and the computer. And so I think we are able to bring emotion and the human element into it. And for so long, I mean, accountants have been accused of being boring and being behind the computer. So maybe this also presents an opportunity for us to show that we are full of life. We actually care about what we do, and we do put emotion into what we do, and we're just not robots that crunch numbers, but we actually let the numbers tell a story. So definitely a huge opportunity.
Yeah. And let's go back to what you've said earlier on. This is a buzzword. Everybody's talking transformation in all sorts of industries, whether you are talking agriculture, whether you are talking mine, and I don't think it's any different with accounting as well. How does a transformed accounting look like? How does a transformed space around accounting look like to you? Do you have a picture of how a transformed industry or transformed accounting profession should look like?
Yeah, I think, outside of the fact that it should represent the demographics of the country we live in from a gender perspective and a race perspective, what for me the transformation means is that we are able to have different voices in a room that allow us to see different aspects of a certain issue. So it allows us to be able to apply ourselves from all different angles and be able to engage at issues fully. So I think when we talk about transformation, for me, that's what it looks like. Looks like just being in a room and being able to fully engage, because you've got such different perspectives coming from people that have walked different journeys and therefore will reason very differently. And I think if you put all of that into one room and you're able to then make a way to combine all those different outlooks, then you really have a really good profession that is able to really represent what's going on and really make an impact and not have any blind spots where we make decisions based on one-sided and then only for a few years to look back and see we didn't consider all aspects.
This is Like a Graduate. We're going to take a break. When we come back, there's still a couple of issues to explore here, including the gala dinner. We'll also look at some of the questions that might have trickled in on 012-382-9257. We take a break. We're back. Welcome back from a quick break. We are discussing growing South African chartered accounting profession. And on the line to us now is Dankie Mokwena, who is the African woman chartered accountant, head of a student chapter. I need to be very meticulous in saying that. She's on the line to us now. And obviously there are a number of questions here that are coming in, Dankie, from some of the listeners who are listening in. And one is from Patrick, who is out in Obakeng, and he's asking, with regards to the chartered accountant profession and being dominated by males, what does a day look like being at work? I suppose it's just a question purely out of interest here.
So I think that question, I might not be able to answer it. And the reason why is because once we qualify, right, and I become a chartered accountant, I'm most likely not to end up in a room full of other chartered accountants. So in terms of just being in a room full of chartered accountants, probably not able to, but being in a room full of just males in general that are from other professionals, I think a lot of us face that day to day, whether mostly male and also of a different race. And And I think what that means for me as a Black young woman, it means that I need to come into that room fully knowing my story, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I have to make sure that I work twice as hard to make sure that, I'm able to not, I don't want to say burn the bridge for
Yeah.
those coming after me, but it's a lot of weight that you carry to make sure that, one, you represent the other women that are coming after you, but two, also to uphold the profession itself. So it's a tough one, but I think
Yeah.
it's a constant reminder that you have to make sure that you show up in the best possible way.
There you go. Now, Aston from Block BB is asking, how long did you study in the university in order to become a chartered accountant?
Yeah. So that would be 4 years of university learning, 3 years where you would be studying an undergraduate diploma and BCom. And just to note, please make sure that the university in which you're studying from is accredited by SAICA. You can go on the SAICA website to find out which degree from what university is accredited, because when you don't do that, you will finish your 3 years of your undergrad only to find out that it wasn't accredited, and it will require you to do an additional year at a university that is accredited
Sure.
before doing your CTA, which is your honors. So that should also take you a year. So combined, that would be 4 years. Then thereafter, you can then pursue your articles. We have two training programs, which is top and tip. The one you do within an audit firm, and the one is basically outside of audit. You can get that kind of training from different companies that are accredited by SAICA to provide training. So the respective banks have CA training programs. There's also different energy companies that have CA training programs, and a whole lot of other companies that do offer that training. And within those 3 years, SAICA puts in a very good program for 3 years of the kind of exposure you are supposed to have. And 1 year into, 2 months actually into your training program, you will then write the first board exam, which is called ITC. And it's mainly based on what you've learned the past 4 years to make sure that from a theoretical point of view, you are sound enough to, pursue this profession. And then 2 years into your articles, towards the end of your second year, you will then take an APC exam. And that exam basically tests to say, now that you've been working and have had different opportunities to put the practical knowledge, to put the theoretical knowledge into practice, are you able to then operate as a professional who's able to reason and critically solve business related scenarios? So it will have different kinds of scenarios that are based on a business, and it will test how you respond to that and how you reason. And so once you've written that exam, you will then have 1 more year of your articles. And if you're able to then have passed both board exams and all the different measures that SAICA puts in place within those 3 years, if you're able to then show that, you will then be signed off, and you can then register as a chartered accountant and use that designation within your profession, your professional career.
Before I get to Thapelo Malachi's question, let me try and join in on what you are saying, especially given how long and taxing that journey sounds. The importance of I've often heard this being spoken about, coaching, mentoring. In a journey like that, how beneficial and important is coaching and mentoring?
It's everything, Obakeng. I think even from a personal perspective, in terms of how my career has turned out and the kind of decisions I made from where I'm training, even for my articles, was largely influenced by my mentor. And if I didn't have him, I probably would have made a very costly a decision on my own. So I think as early as possible, even from a high school level and at a university level, it's very critical to get a mentor who's going to guide you through that journey to ensure that you make decisions that will reap off the benefits later on. And I think in terms of sponsorship, once you get into the workplace, identify someone of influence that is going to advocate for you in rooms that you are not able to yet enter into. And I think obviously two-sided in terms of the person who's seeking the mentorship or the sponsorship, to be very clear about what you want. because I think, as much as mentors do a great job and it's a great service, the time and energy that they're pouring into you requires that you also are very clear about what you want and how they can help you get there. And in terms of sponsorship, because someone is literally putting, their name on the line, you have to show up. You have to be able for them to beg you and say, you know what, I've seen Dankie do 1, 2, 3. I can advocate that, yes, maybe she doesn't have the experience, maybe she's young or whatever the reason is, but I can get into this room and say, give Dankie an opportunity, So I think both of them very critical to how well you do in your career and the kind of support and the different perspectives that you will get from these individuals that are more experienced than you are.
There you go. Now, Tapelo Malachi from Acadia is asking, why is it important to have more chartered accountant professionals in South Africa?
One, because of the shortage we are seeing, but I think also because South Africa is a developing economy, right? It needs all hands on deck, whether from a private sector perspective and even from a public sector, more so in the public sector, because we should all be affected by how well the public sector is doing, because it reflects the quality of life for most of us, right? We make use of a lot of public services, from the clinics that we go to the schools that our children go to, to make sure that they get that foundational knowledge. So I think when we are able to get into those spaces where we have some kind of influence and can hold different people accountable, from even just the budget allocation to making sure that these budgets are allocated to the right kind of causes that will take our country forward. We need CAs in those positions to be able to have to be the voice of reason and drive change.
Yeah. And it's a very risky job, I suppose. If you go in to flag a tender and stop it there, you might find yourself obviously targeted. So that's a very, very important job indeed. But then Malebo is asking from Block L, as a learner in matric, what are the marks I need to qualify, and which university is offering that? Where can you study to be a chartered accountant? I suppose, loosely speaking, that's the question.
Yeah. So can she please go to the SAICA website? It's going to have a list of all the universities within South Africa that are accredited. And we also have some private institutions such as Milpark that are also accredited to offer, to offer the CA training or schooling. So I can't name them from the top of my head. So there's UJ, UCT, they all accredited. So just go on there. There's a list of all those universities. And obviously, because the universities differ, they will have different interest requirements in terms of what is required from a percentage point of view. If I can just remember, top of my mind, I haven't looked at the requirements in a while, but I would think you would at least need to be in the 60s in terms of your maths and your English and accounting. But I do think that, if maybe you are already late into the year and you're thinking, sure, I might not get those marks and be able to pursue the career, I do think a lot of universities do offer bridging courses where you might sometimes be able to study a general BCom degree and do one additional year to then convert more into the CA stream. So if that's something that you really feel strongly about and you feel that your results might not allow you, there are other ways to still pursue the CA stream.
All right. Let's look at some of the questions that we have. And in a moment, of course, we will look at, I know that you have the annual Women of Substance Conference. I want to get to that in a moment, but we're still continuing with the conversation right up until the hour 9. Now, do you offer bursaries for learners still in high school?
Unfortunately, not at this point. And I think when we speak about the gala dinner, I will explain more in terms of why we are unable to do this currently. But hopefully, if we can get more support as an organization that allows us to raise funds at a much more rapid pace, we then will obviously be open to expanding our sponsorship to even undergrad level.
All right. So I don't know if we take a brief turn, and when we return from there, we get straight into the Women of Substance Conference and Fundraising Banquet that I know you are hosting. I'm interested to know when that is happening, the purpose behind that, and all of that as we head towards the hour. Now, let's take a break. We're back in a moment. A quick break, and we are now still continuing with the conversation. Let's get now into the annual Women of Substance Conference fundraising, Dankie, that you will be hosting. I'm not entirely sure when this is going to be happening. When is this happening?
It's happening on the 1st of August, so in a few weeks.
So
yeah.
This is not certainly the first of its kind, is it?
No, it's not. We host these on an annual basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, we host them on an annual basis.
What is the aim of this annual conference?
Yes. So the made up of two parts, right? The one would be the conference, and the one would be the gala dinner. But the main purpose of I'm going to say the main purpose, and then also outline the other reasons why we also hosted, is to mainly raise funding for our bursary. This is the main event where we are able to raise funding through different partnerships with different organizations. So within this, then we are able to, one, highlight industry leaders that are doing very well. So we will have different categories of awards from, your public sector CAs, your private sector CEOs. So we basically highlight African women that are within influential positions that are making great strides and are having a positive impact. And like I said, I think as the AWCA, we want to support each other and be able to shine a light on what other Black CAs are doing to show the potential that we have and the role that we can play in society. So that would be the second reason as to why we host. And then lastly, the third reason, which talks to the conference that we normally hold during the day before our gala dinner. These conferences, we use these to drive critical conversations that we need to have as a profession. And these help us navigate or at least give us a guide as to what are the critical things we need to be looking out for as CAs and how can we drive impact. So, for example, this year, our theme is just around, moving to mastery, empowering excellence, and inspiring change, right? And I think within itself, that heading says a lot of things about what our focus is and what we are trying to drive as an organization and as a profession.
Sure. I know that some heavy discussions will be featured there in that particular conference. Give us what will be discussed there and who to expect as a keynote speaker.
Yeah, so there'll be different industry leaders, and some of the things that we're looking at there is to say, how can we come together as different industry leaders to collaborate for change? That will be one of the discussions that we'll be having there. And then the one will be around how we can lead change within SA and making a difference in that sense. So we do have I hope people follow us on AWCA SA on Instagram, where we've been posting some highlights in terms of who will be joining us at some of these sessions and what are some of the critical topics we'll be covering. But you will see if you do go on the website, some of the speakers that we will have there. There will be about a few panels that will be there. And if I can just highlight some of the people that we'll be having there.
Please do.
We have, we've got Bongi Ngoma, who is the National Head of Audit. And like I said, the public sector is very important to us. So we want to hear from, the likes of the Auditor General to say, what are they seeing within the public sector? How do we then, collaborate for change, where we're harnessing diversity and shaping tomorrow? So that's one of the discussions that they'll be having there. We've got the likes of Anna Piri, who works at R&B, where they will also then be discussing some of the evolution of leading women in South Africa, to just look at what are some of the things that women are doing and how has it changed over time and what impact we're having on the economy. So there'll be different people from, Standard Bank within that same panel. The CFO of Personal and Private Banking will also be joining that discussion together with the Regional Finance Director from Duke Corporate Education. So a lot of different industry leaders on the panel and off the panel that will be offering an opportunity for people to network and just gain industry knowledge from different perspectives, to see, even if you're not in that industry, to see what other people are doing within their different sectors and how you can also implement the same kind of changes within the industries that you work in.
Very interesting. It appears to me that you will have that conference and the gala dinner in one day, that is on the 1st of August. How do you plan to go about this? Do you have a conference perhaps until 12, then a gala dinner late at 6? How is this going to work?
Yes, so on the morning of the 1st of August, we will have the conference from about 9 o'clock to about 2. It normally ends around 2, to give us time to go home and just freshen up and put on our dresses and look fabulous for the gala dinner. And that gala dinner normally then starts from 6 p.m. to late into the night, where obviously, because we are giving awards to industry leaders, we also want to take some time to celebrate the great work that they've done. And so these gala dinners and the conference really are crucial to us being able to raise funding for our bursary scheme. So ways in which we do that, we obviously have different companies that will buy a table or sponsor a table for the gala dinner, and that money will go towards our bursary fund. But we also have opportunities even within our AWCA website, where if individuals want to contribute or make a donation towards our bursary funds, they also then able to do that.
All right. Now, are males invited?
Yes, they are. It's a very inclusive celebration. As much as the AWCA, we focus on growing African women CAs within Africa, within South Africa. We do understand and have a deep appreciation for the different male leaders that have acted time and time again as advocates to help us get into certain spaces and also hold that space for us. So we very much work with men, even though we are a women-led organization, and we try to be as inclusive as we can.
Right. And when is this happening? Again, it's on the 1st of August, right?
Yes.
I thought we got that. But before I let you go, though, I was thinking you've been great. Firstly, let me put that to you. You've been quite exceptional. It was great to have a conversation with you. But before I let you go, if you are able to tell us, even without getting into details, am I correct in saying your approach suggests to me that you've blocked one corrupt tender or two?
I will choose not to say anything. I will choose not to say anything, but I will say within the spaces I operate in, I ensure that we are compliant with all rules and regulations.
Yeah. Thank you so much for making time. It was great having a conversation with you. Dankie, let's hope we are able to have more and more conversation going forward. Thank you so much. You've been great sport, no doubt.
Thank you so much, Obakeng, for having me here and allowing me to share on the AWC and the great work that we are doing.
There you go.
The Groundbreakers, Mondays to Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. on TUTFM.